Willkommen zurück. Das ist Track 2, der spannendste Track von insgesamt 3 Tracks. Also schaut euch gar nicht um. Ihr seid hier richtig bei den digitalen Geschäftsmodellen. Und wenn wir darüber sprechen, haben wir bisher über Best Cases gesprochen. Also ja, Dinge, Best Practice. Wir haben gezeigt, wo es schon funktioniert. Wir möchten aber jetzt vielleicht mal in die Materie einsteigen, um nochmal tiefer zu schauen, wo beginne ich? Wie sind die ersten Schritte? Und wenn wir schon über Schritte reden, dann auch darüber, dass diese Schritte vielleicht niemals enden. Also digitale Geschäftsmodelle entwickeln. Und warum ist es eigentlich eine never-ending Story? Wir hören dazu diesen Mann, der seit mehr als 15 Jahren in verschiedenen Funktionen, Positionen für die d.velop Gruppe tätig ist. Seit 2015 ist er Geschäftsführer der d.velop Business Services. Er verantwortet da die Themenkomplexe Corporate Entrepreneurship. Seit diesem Jahr verantwortet er als Chief Digital Officer unter anderem zusätzlich die Themen, ja, also unsere Themen, digitales Prozessmanagement und besonderen Fokus hier auf einen sehr spannenden Bereich, die Customer Journey. Gehen wir mit ihm auf diese Journey. Herzlich willkommen, sage ich übrigens nicht nur ihm, sondern auch euren Fragen. Ich freue mich auf alles das, was euch interessiert. Kann auch Kritik, Anregungen sein, irgendein Hinweis, eine Feststellung von euch. Sehr gerne aber eben auch Fragen werden wir stellen nach der gemeinsamen Journey mit Alexander Zirl. Alex, bitte.
Thanks, Marvin, for the introduction. I hope everyone can understand me very well. And I've started my screen sharing. I hope it works well. If you give me a thumbs up, I'm sure it works. Fine. Okay. So I want to give you a very brief introduction on how you could possibly get started with digital business models, and why, from my perspective, it's a never-ending story. Because I guess once or a lot of people are talking about digital business models, and you might think that once you've reached it, the digital business model, you are done, but it's a never-ending story. My name is Alex. I'm the CDO of d.velop, and I've brought with me 3 examples, 2 of very famous companies of digital business models, and 1 out of personal experience on what our experiences are and how we evolved our business model. So first things first, let's have a brief look at what a digital business model is. And if you talk maybe to tech people, they might not even understand the question, because digital business models, if you look at Google, Facebook, all the famous companies, they are ubiquitous and they are available all around us. But if you talk to maybe people from traditional industries and traditional business models, you know, they might start with launching an app and then they stop and they think they have a digital business model, but that's not what we mean. I mean, a digital business model is a form of creating value based on the development of customer benefits, and especially using digital technologies, and not only in one building block of the business model, but in all or most of the building blocks of a business model. So looking at a few examples of famous or maybe also not so famous companies, we see they have a lot of stuff in common. We can actually see that many of these business models of these companies we can see here wouldn't have been possible without digital technologies and digital enablement. You can see a lot of companies having double-sided markets like Airbnb, Uber Eats, Spotify, and so on, but also other companies displayed here. If you look in the literature, I believe there are 3 or 4 core aspects of any business model. And the first one is the value proposition we're trying to offer and the customer segments. So, and that is the most, from my perspective, that is the most important part. It's always about what pain are you trying to solve for the customer? What needs are you trying to satisfy? And what is the added value you're bringing to your customers? So you should always start with that part. Of course, there's also the revenue model. You have to make sure that you gain profitable at a certain point in time, and the architecture on how you actually deliver the value. But let me say again, it's the most important part to start with the customer needs. And I know it's always easy to quote famous people, but Steve Jobs once said, it's always the right way to start from the customer and the customer experience that the customer wants to have, and work backwards, and everything else develops around that. And I believe for most companies, that's very difficult. It's really, really hard because they have to make a psychological twist. They probably have fallen in love with their solution they are offering. They have probably fallen in love with their business model and how it works. And that makes it very, very difficult to actually transition to a digital business model because, you know, you're taking apart, you're ripping apart your business model and trying to move into digital. So also, don't try to fall in love with that. Don't try to fall in love with the first idea and your existing solution. Try to fall in love with your customer needs and the value proposition you're trying to offer. And one easy way to sketch this out, and that's a good starting point, and I think it's been a good starting point for the last decade, is the business model canvas. Credits go to Alex Osterwalder and Yves Pigneux, who invented this at the Hack in Lausanne quite some years ago. But I think it's still very popular, and it's much easier to develop a business model, even a digital one, to use a canvas such as this, instead of, you know, making some arbitrary projections over the next 5 years and just looking at the numbers. And you can actually model out what's most important, and even if the customer needs don't fundamentally change from an existing business model, you can leave it at the core, but you can change everything else in the business model to become digital. And it's not always a question of whether you want it, but most often it's a question of whether the customers want it and whether the environment changes it and makes it necessary to do so. So, of course, you have also the revenue model here at the bottom part in this canvas, and you have the rest of the architecture, such as key partners, activities, and resources that you need, and customer relationships and channels that your customers want to be reached through. So, enough theory. Let's have a look at 3 examples in a very brief manner. I brought one example who developed very famous, who developed the business model from scratch. Another one that shifted, not so well known that they actually shifted, although it's a very famous company. And the third example is based on our own experiences at d.velop. Because as a software development company, our business model has always been, per definition, digital. So let's start with the first one. I guess everyone knows the Hilton hotels and resorts and Airbnb. And if you look at the business model, they're totally different. The business model is totally different, but to get started, and if you gain a higher flight level, looking at what kind of customer need they're trying to serve and what value proposition they're trying to deliver, we could say if we reach a flight level that's high enough, we could actually say they're trying to solve the need of overnight stay, or let's call it worldwide accommodation. I know you might say, well, Hilton, you know, you think of luxurious hotels with large windows, nice views and stuff like that. And maybe Airbnb, you don't bring that into the same connection, but rest assured, they also have some really great apartments for renting. Obviously, large windows, nice views, and it looks very luxurious. So they basically somewhat serve the same customer segment. But that's not the point. The point here is that if at a very high level, and I believe it makes it easier if you switch to a digital business model, if you want to reinvent or invent a new digital business model to gain a very high flight level and take a look at the customer needs and the value proposition, and that makes it easier not to fall in love with the whole business model, but rather with the customer, what the customer wants. So if you look at Hilton, you know, some key activities of them, they are definitely around their real estate properties. You know, the key resources are the hotels, and I mean, they have 5,000 plus hotels around the world, so that brings a lot of maintenance with it. And they have to, well, they actually have more than 100,000 people on the payroll. So basically, that drives their cost structure within their business model as well. We know revenue streams, they come through bookings and franchises. And yeah, they're somewhat digital in a few building blocks of the business model, as in the customer relations. You can, you know, do your online bookings, and they have an Hilton Honors app. But at its core, they're not digital. You know, they have a few building blocks move to digital, but not at its core. So if we look at our Airbnb, opening up a double-sided market. On the one hand side, they have their hosts actually offering the apartments for rent, and on the other hand, they have their customers, you know, trying to rent these apartments. So for them, they don't have any physical assets. They just bring together two players that are out in the market, and that has tremendous effect on their business model and their key activities. One of the key activities is not around real estate properties, but it's around growing network effects. Because in a double-sided market, it's important for the host to have a lot of customers on the platform, because if you have a lot of customers, then it gets more attractive for the hosts, and vice versa. So if you have a lot of hosts on the platform, it becomes more attractive to the customers because they have a larger offering. And all that is only possible through digital technologies, and the core asset of Airbnb, or one of the core aspects of Airbnb, is its IT platform and the data they have. Obviously, they're making money through referral fees. Now, we can surely say this wouldn't have been possible without digital advancement and digital technologies, because if we take a look at the numbers, we can say that Airbnb has rented more rooms per year than Hilton, has served more customers a year than Hilton, and they are available and present in more countries worldwide. I think it's more than 200 than Hilton. And to get this all straight, to make this all working, have the processes in place, that everything works fine, you need a lot of digital capabilities to do that. So again, here, you know, in retrospective, you could say for Airbnb, they didn't have to do a psychological twist, because they started from scratch. So they basically took a look at, let's say, Hilton, and they had a clear enemy to attack, and they had a clear business model or an industry standard of a business model they could attack. And that's also a good starting point. If you have a good enemy that you can attack, that brings a lot of energy to the table. So that might be a good starting point if you start from scratch. Now, of course, there are a lot of companies around that have traditional business models, and it's not always so easy to start from scratch. So let's take a look at how one also very famous company made the shift from a rather traditional business model to a digital one. And we're talking about Netflix. Again, if we raise the flight level, we could basically say they serve rental video or video entertainment. And back at the time when they started in 1999, and that might not be so widely known, they actually started out from a rather traditional perspective. The traditional industry of DVD rental was basically dominated by Blockbuster. They had like 5,000 stores in the US, 8,000 stores worldwide. By now they're dead. I think they have one store left. It's probably rather a museum than a DVD rental store. But anyways, when Netflix came in, they were so amazed by how Amazon tried to, let's say, revolutionize selling books. So they tried to apply that to DVD rental. And they took the industry standard, and they only changed a very few things. They didn't totally revolutionize the whole business model, but they said, we don't want to build 5,000 stores across the US. We'll have one central store, just like Amazon, so to say, and the rest stayed the same. They even used postal mail to deliver the videos in DVDs. They didn't use a digital channel, and they even stick with pay-per-use. So, and what Netflix always said is they always try to advance. So that was part of their business idea, and they've tried to free themselves from defending the old business model, because they had, so to say, also an enemy like Blockbuster they wanted to defeat. So the next step they did is they switched the model to a subscription model, and that brought new challenges with them, because now they had to manage a very attractive portfolio, and they started using data analytics to build a recommendation engine. Because when you move to a subscription-based model, they were very eager to deliver a lot of videos to the consumers, because the more videos and movies they would consume, the more attractive the platform would be. And imagine they were shipping at the peak, they were shipping like 2 million DVDs a week, and you can't do that by hand. So they had to invent some kind of a data analytics algorithm and recommendation engine to actually deliver the best matching movies to their customers. So that was the next building block of the business model they changed to digital. And well, that also influenced their cost structure at the very bottom here. So they invested a lot of time and effort in R&D, and that was the start of the technology platform they're using today. And that was one of their biggest assets, and still is one of their biggest assets. And as the environment changed and the customer needs changed, as we all know today, they started delivering on-demand video and movies out to any device. Because at a certain point in time, from '99 to nowadays, well, everyone had an iPad, iPhone, Android device, whatever, you name it. So they were able to deliver on that, or to advance on that, and deliver the videos once the technological advancement of internet bandwidth and the like was ready to be used for that. So again, if we gain a very high flight level, we could say they both served the same customer need, but Blockbuster miserably failed, so to say. They went bankrupt, and Netflix advanced through technological advancement. So they used the technological advancement and digital capabilities that were present. And well, as we can see of the failure of Blockbuster, it was also necessary to do that because customers simply expected that. So maybe example number 3, once you have reached a digital business model, or you built one, you know, everyone's talking about going digital, you might think, well, now I'm done, but obviously you're not. It's somewhat like a never-ending story, because environment changes, customer needs change, customer expectations changes, although the core customer need is basically the same. So looking at d.velop in a traditional software development company, you know, our key activities are around software development, obviously, and marketing and sales. Of course, we have a few key partners that resell our software. We sell it directly through our own sales force. We use partners, and most of the revenues come from license fees, maintenance fees, and consulting services. And we delivered on-premise software at the customer site. Always with a focus in a digital workplace, with a strong focus on document management. So at a very high level, the customer needs around the digital workplace and document management, of course, they have changed over time, but at the core, and if you gain a very high flight level again, there are a lot of similarities now and back then. But you know, customers expected us to deliver also on the cloud, and that was a rather easy decision to make because that was so clear. But on the other hand, you could also see that the market was shifting from basically 10, 15 years ago. The market was mostly dominated by the available offering and the producers and manufacturers, and it basically shifted towards a market that's dominated by the demand side and the consumers, or the consumption side. So we were thinking, how can we actually deliver on that, and how can we make it easier for our customers to gain value from our offering? And that's where we said, okay, we have to change something, and we built the d.velop platform, which is basically also some kind of a double-sided market, where we invited app builders to build software on our platform, or offer their offerings on our platform to the existing customers. So it's a win-win situation. So looking back at our business model and how it changed, we have similar, tasks that we have to do if we build a double-sided market. On the one hand, on the right-hand side, of course, we're getting new customers with the cloud. But on the other hand, we are investing a lot of time and effort, and also money, in gaining new app builders that could actually deliver new solutions or the existing solutions to our customers. So it should be attractive for the app builders because we have a large customer base, and it should be attractive for the customers because we are offering way more solutions and software items, so to say, that we could actually develop by ourselves. So it's moving a little bit. Of course, we're still developing our own software, but we need to spend more effort in building the app builder base and growing that, and also growing network effects. On the other hand, having a platform in the cloud, of course, influences our cost structure and also key partners, because we don't have our own data center. We use cloud providers for that. So we also need to make sure that runs smoothly, which brings along another key activity, which is cloud operations, which we didn't have so much beforehand because most of the software was running at the customer side. Now we do have to do that within our cloud platform as well. And of course, we could see that also the customer needs, they are changing, although they're still all talking about the digital workplace, but they like to, make purchases anonymously. They expect more self-services, which wasn't too, too fancy beforehand. So what we did is we built our online store where customers can actually buy our products and the products from the app builders. And we're still investing a lot of time and effort in the self-service items so that customers can actually, use the software, configure it themselves without any interpersonal touch points if they don't like to. And obviously also the revenue streams, they changed. We still have customers that purchase licenses and use the software on-prem, but most of them moving to the cloud, moving onto the d.velop platform. Of course, the revenue stream is based on subscription models, and also based on the app builder sales, because just like our Airbnb, we are also gaining a few revenues from the app builders that are selling their products through the store. So from a retro perspective, it all seems maybe obvious what you had to do, but you can actually see that even if you have a digital business model, you can reinvent it all the time, always focus on what the customer needs and how customer needs change, and then that influences the rest of your business model, although at the very, very core, the value proposition and maybe the customer needs are somewhat similar to beforehand. So I think it never stops, it always continues, and the journey is on. Thank you very much.
Dank, ich bin schon zu hören wieder. Dankeschön. Alexander, danke für diese Zeit, für diesen interessanten, man muss schon sagen, Deep Dive. Das ist was für Feinschmecker. Du hast gerade was Entscheidendes gesagt, oder du hast viele entscheidende Dinge gesagt, aber ein Kern, nämlich die Herangehensweise ganz zu Beginn, ist dieses customer-zentriertes Denken. Kaum eine Firma lebt das ja bis in die Details. Eigentlich, glaube ich, bei der Entwicklung jedes Produkts so vor, wie Amazon beispielsweise. Gibt es da ein Umdenken, oder ich frage mal anders, wieso, du nanntest es, sind verliebt in ihr Business Model und kümmern sich manchmal gar nicht so darum, was die Kundinnen und Kunden wollen. Geht das überhaupt noch? Also woher kommt dieses Missverständnis, dass ich erstmal für mich denke, bevor ich meine Zielgruppe später frage?
Ja, die Frage war auf Deutsch, ich versuche mal auf Deutsch zu antworten. Ja, das ist natürlich eine gute Frage. Ich würde gar nicht behaupten, dass die Companies eher an sich denken. Also das wäre ja schon sehr, sehr egozentrisch, aber ich glaube, das sieht man ja auch, wenn sich Startups, sage ich mal, neue Ideen ausdenken. Ja? Die Idee steht dann oft im Raum und am Ende verlieben sich viele ja dann in die Idee und versuchen das in den Markt zu drücken und verlieren so ein bisschen aus den Augen, was das wirkliche Problem des Kunden ist, weil das kann sich ja ändern, das kann sich ändern, man kann neue Erkenntnisse gewinnen und dann fängt der Psychological Twist eigentlich schon an, den man machen muss, weil man denkt sich so, ja, nein, aber die Idee ist ja gut. Und auch wenn man sich die Statistiken anguckt aus den letzten 10 oder 15 Jahren, also unter den Top 3, warum Startups scheitern, sieht man ja auch immer, da ist kein Market Need. Ja, ich glaube auch so Beispiele wie Blockbuster. Ich meine, in der Retrospektive ist das immer super, super easy. Aber die hätten das selbst revolutionieren können. Auch Hilton hätte die hatten genug Marktmacht, genug Expertise, genug Cash, würde ich behaupten, um so ein Modell aufzubereiten wie Airbnb. Haben sie aber nicht gemacht, weil sie natürlich in dem eigenen Modell auch gefangen sind, was auch ein Stück weit in Ordnung ist, für Hilton besser ausgegangen als für Blockbuster. Aber ich glaube, das ist das Wichtige. Und ich glaube, es hilft einfach, wenn man ganz viel Abstand gewinnt und einfach wirklich nur auf den Kundenneed schaut und dann überlegt, wie könnte ich den eigentlich noch lösen. Ja.
Gegenangebot. Steve Jobs hat doch, glaube ich, damals in die Entwicklung des iPhones keinen Cent in eine Befragung der möglichen Kundinnen und Kunden gesteckt. Ist also voll das Risiko eingegangen, oder anders gesagt, wenn ich denen das nicht in die Hand gebe, sondern sie vorher frage, wenn sie nicht verstehen, was da überhaupt als Gamechanger auf sie zukommt. Ich muss es ihnen in die Hand geben, sonst verstehen sie es nicht. So einen Ansatz gibt es ja auch. Ist der ganz unberechtigt mittlerweile?
Nein, würde ich nicht sagen, ganz im Gegenteil, ist überhaupt nicht unberechtigt, weil die Frage ist ja, wie komme ich denn zu der Erkenntnis, was der Kunde braucht? Also das heißt ja, wenn wir jetzt ein bisschen nitty-gritty sind, könnte man sagen, das heißt ja Customer Need und nicht Customer Want. Okay. Henry Ford hat das auch gesagt, kennen wir auch alle, wenn man die Kunden gefragt hätte, was sie haben wollen, hätten sie gesagt, ich will schnellere Pferde haben. Ich glaube, es ist auch eine Mischung, ja. Also ich meine, das ist harte Arbeit, ja. Also ich meine, da kann man natürlich viel drüber referieren, aber am Ende des Tages ist es harte Arbeit. Ich glaube, man muss schon rausgehen, sich die Kunden auch anschauen, wie die damit arbeiten, wie sag ich mal, so die Peripherie bei den Kunden ist, um zu verstehen, wie die das nutzen und was die für einen Mehrwert benötigen können. Ja? Weil oft können sie es selber gar nicht formulieren.
Ich frage in die Community, lade auch noch ein, haben wir Fragen von extern? Das ist nicht der Fall. Das ist im Grunde auch ein gutes Zeichen. Es scheint schlüssig erklärt worden zu sein. Denn wir haben einige Teilnehmer bei uns Was sind denn deine aktuellen Projekte, an denen du arbeitest? Berätst du Kunden? Was ist deine exakte Funktion? Und vielleicht auch ein bisschen was erzählt zu der Einheit, die du bei d.velop leitest.
Ja, also wir sind ja stark auf Wachstumskurs und glauben natürlich an die d.velop-Plattform, und das bringt natürlich viele auch prozessuale Herausforderungen für uns einfach, sei es für Kunden, wir hatten das Thema Self-Service in unserem Businessmodell, aber auch rund um die App-Builder, das ganze Onboarding, was wir vorher nicht hatten. Also in dem klassischen Businessmodell, was wir vorher hatten, gab es diese To-Dos letztendlich nicht. Und um das vernünftig abbilden zu können, auch organisatorisch, am besten so, dass der Kunde nichts davon mitbekommt oder es für ihn einfach smooth läuft. Da gibt es halt schon die eine oder andere Herausforderung, und da kümmern wir uns gerade drum.
Ich wünsche alles Gute fürs Unternehmen auf dem nächsten weiteren Wachstumswegen. Wir haben gehört, ein Ziel gibt es nicht. Zwischenziele, never ending story, gilt ja auch für euch und dich.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Alexander, bis bald. Dankeschön.